Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Mid-America Print Council PrintStream, What to Know About Residencies. My name is Brett Taylor, and I'm the current membership chair for the Mid-America Print Council, and I'll be moderating the panel alongside Lois Harad.
Hi, everyone. My name is Lois Harada, and I'm the social media chair for the Mid-America Print Council. I'm going to encourage you all to think of some great questions that we can ask our three panelists. Just use the Q&A function at the bottom of your Zoom screen, and we'll be able to ask the panelists the questions after they present.
And to be able to provide you with the most time for questions to our panelists at the end, we're going to jump right into our program introductions. Starting with Director Erika Hess from Chautauqua Visual Arts.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Brett and Lois. I'm really excited to be here to talk more about Chautauqua Visual Arts and how we are working with printmakers and what you can experience at our residency. Would you like me to go ahead and share the screen right now and we can dive into it? All right, let me go ahead and pull this up here. So again, thank you to everybody who's tuning in. It's really wonderful to have you here and be able to share more about our programs. So again, my name is Erika B. Hess, and I am the Artistic Director at Chautauqua Visual Arts Residency. And I'm really excited to share our two residencies with you. We have our 6-week residency for emerging artists, which I'll be talking about. And that runs from June 21st to August 3rd with a deadline of March 1st. And then we have a 2-week residency for established artists, and that runs from August 10th to August 24th, and the deadline is May 1st. And again, we can get into the nitty gritty, and please feel free to ask me any questions that you have. So the first thing I like to talk about with Chautauqua Visual Arts is a little bit about Chautauqua Institution, which is where the residency is located. So it's actually housed on the grounds of Chautauqua Institution, which is a lakeside community. And I love that they say that they are dedicated to exploring the best in human values. That really attracted me to this space and being part of it. And they do that through the residencies, which we are the artist residency there. They also have music and dance, but they also have lectures that they have here. You can see right here in the amphitheater, concerts, performances, and so much more that explore these qualities. And these are all accessible to the artist residents that we have. So you would be able to attend all of these. So now I'm just going to dive into these two residencies that we have, both, of course, open to printmakers, also open to painters, sculptors. We really run the gamut here, installation art, whatever it is. So you will be working with artists who are potentially working on book arts or something like that alongside them. So again, the 6-week residency is for emerging artists. And I like to use that term so people can self-identify as an emerging artist. I know 40-year-olds plus who are emerging artists. I know 18-year-olds. It really runs the gamut. And it's really a place where you can learn and make outside the pressures of the marketplace, of an academic place, and work with incredible faculty. And that's a key part of this residency, which we'll talk about. And then the 2-week residency is for established artists. Again, self-identifying. You can be a 22-year-old and be established. You could be 55. Again, I want you to be able to self-identify there. And you will have accesses to classes and studio visits while you're there, but it's much more self-motivated where you're working in the print shop or wherever it may be on your own work. So each resident here will be receiving, of course, room and board, 24-hour access to their studio, our facilities, which we're really going to get into, which you can see here. New this year is a weaving studio if somehow you want to be bringing that into your practice. And then again, 6-week faculty, 2-week, you're going to be really working more with Sally Morgan, who is a gallerist in Chelsea. She's going to be coming in. And we also have our weekly artist lectures and, of course, the concerts, etc. So I really want to get into the facilities with you guys. So you can check that out. Regardless of what medium you're working in, you will have your own studio. So as a printmaker, you will have a studio where you're going to be having all of your stuff. And then, of course, you're going to be going into the print shop and you'll be able to work back and forth there. And this is accessible 7 days a week, 24 hours a day. You'll also be able to go to our ceramic center if that becomes something you want to work in. Again, I'll talk about this later, but one of our faculty members, Kevin Umana, he is a trained printmaker, but he utilizes ceramics in his work quite frequently, and he'll be teaching there. And so he does some crossover, so you'll be able to experience that. And here we go. We have our print shop and silkscreen shop. So here you can see a little bit more about what we have in our printmaking studio. So we do have a lot of people that are working on relief prints, mono printing, dry point, some experimental processes. And you do have 2 printmaking presses that are 24 by 40 inches. So thinking about, of course, the size you can be working in. And then in our silkscreen shop, we have our 8 aluminum silkscreen frames and other things that you can be working with in there. And I also want to mention that we do have a studio, somebody who's going to be working in the studio. That's Taro Takazawa. He's from UNC, and we're really excited to be working with him this year. And he is going to be teaching some classes. So if maybe there's something that you're not familiar with, you could go in and work with him. Otherwise, he'll just be a presence that you'll be able to be learning from and working with while you're in the studio there. Of course, we have our drawing studio and our wood shop. Our galleries are also a really big part of our residency. So we are constantly having shows that are going through, one of which is actually a paper show where we're going to have various printmakers who are going to be showing in there. And also Taro is going to be having some work on campus as well. So you'll be able to see his work. We also have our artist lectures where you can, of course, be hearing from various artists that we bring in. And I'm going to run through our residency because I don't want to take time away from Hannah and Macy. But here quickly, you'll see the faculty that our 6-week residents will be working with. And I want to focus again on our printmakers. But I do want to say that most of the artists that we've brought in, they work in printmaking in some fashion or some way. Like Susan, for example, she is a painter, but she does do beautiful prints as well. Here's a recent show of hers. Here's Cosmo White. He works in various disciplines as well, including drawing, painting, installation, and sculpture. And I've seen some of his prints that he created when he was actually an MFA student many moons ago, which were really incredible. So there's Cosmo's work. Elizabeth Mooney, she actually will be working in our print shop with students. She wants to be focusing on a class called Behind the Bind, I think is what she's going to be titling it, where she's going to be thinking of where paper folds and how that impacts, of course, an image and how we interact with it. So again, that's Elizabeth Mooney, and she's at Mass Art, and she employs tons of printmaking processes in her paintings. We have Sachi Akiyama, who's coming in. Also, she does a lot of woodcuts. She's going to be teaching primarily printmaking, but she does do beautiful woodcuts as well. There you can see some on the wall there. We have Alex Callender from Smith. Alex also works in printmaking in addition to various other media. Here you can see a installation that she had of a recent show where she put together. And then Kevin Umana, who I mentioned earlier, who I think you guys know. He's just a really incredible artist who is really pushing the boundary of so much. So here's his recent show. I'm just going to go quickly through our 2-week residency as well. So again, 2-week residency is for artists who consider themselves more established and want to be working outside of faculty. It's more for artists who might not have the time to take 6 weeks for a residency, because 6 weeks can be a really long time if you're working or you're a parent, or maybe you're taking care of an aging parent. So that's why I wanted to put together this residency. It's a shorter amount of time where you can really get in there, work on what you need to work on because you have the time and space, and also meet with curators to learn about how they're thinking about exhibitions and how you can connect with them. So we do have Sally Morgan Lehman of Morgan Lehman Gallery in Chelsea, New York. She's fantastic. I've loved working with her. She shows various printmakers. I'm trying to think of the recent show that she just had up, and it's slipping my mind, but I know that that was of a printmaker. But she's fantastic, and I'm very excited to have her in for 3 days to be doing studio visits. And then she is going to be helping us with our final exhibition for the 2-week residency. So she'll be part of that because we will be exhibiting work that artists create while they're there. There isn't pressure to create work, but we do want to give artists that are creating the space to be able to exhibit. And then we have Erika Diamond, who will also be doing studio visits with all of our artists as well for the 2-week residency. So just really quickly, eligibility, which we'll get into later. Basically, both of them is 21 plus is what we're looking for. You do not have to have a college degree. You do not have to be enrolled. This is really just for artists who are 21 plus, who want to be working in the studio and who are self-motivated and want to be working with other artists. And our application is 10 images of your work, descriptions of your work, some short answers, your CV, 1 reference, and your fee, which we can waive. You just have to contact me and we can do that. And I want to say that as we are looking at the applications, it's really going to be based on the work. That's what we want to be looking at, is the work. And I'll go quickly through our tuition and cost. I am very excited to share that our 6-week residency is fully funded. We're really excited to have that, so that it is going to be fully funded. You'll be able to be there. We don't cover the materials. You will have to be paying for your materials. And then the 2-week residency is $3,500. And we can talk about working with you on that as well, but those are going to be the differences there. All right. Thank you guys so much.
Erika, thank you so much. I feel like I was taking a lot of notes, and I'm sure Brett will say too. We contacted all 3 of you because we just really find that your programs are so interesting. So thank you for sharing all of that great information. And now I'm going to pass it to Hannah Demma, who's the Executive Director of the Kimmel Harding Nelson Center for the Arts.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you guys for having me here. And thank you, Erika and Macy, for presenting as well. It's really cool to hear the ins and outs of other programs. I'm actually very new to arts administration, so this is my first directorship, and I've been at the KHN for about a year now, and it's been amazing. I'll start my slideshow. There you go. Can you see that?
Yes, looks great.
Great. Okay. So the KHN was actually my first residency as an artist. I did a residency there in 2018. It was post BFA, when I was just kind of floating around, bartending, working lots of jobs. And it's really hard to focus in the studio when you're doing all these different things. And someone told me about the KHN, and it's in Nebraska City, Nebraska, so southeastern Nebraska, rural town, 7,200 people. And we've been there since 2001. We house 5 residents at any given time, including 2 visual, 2 writers, and a composer or musician. We also make space for artists applying in an interdisciplinary category, which mostly means that they're utilizing 2 or more of those disciplines. Our residents apply for stays ranging from 2 to 8 weeks, and they receive a private bedroom and bathroom and studio and shared kitchen and living spaces. We also give a $175 a week stipend from the Kimmel Foundation, and we also pay for taxi rides to and from the Omaha and Lincoln airports. Here's our building. So the building was actually built by these 3 couples that wanted to retire together. So it was built in 1969, so it's kind of the dream. And then when they passed, the Kimmel Foundation purchased the building and turned it into an artist residency. So we have 2 annual deadlines: March 1st for residencies falling between July and December, and September 1st for residencies between January to June, with a 2-week shutdown in between for maintenance and cleaning. Here's a kitchen. We utilize a blind jury approach to applications. We have past residents that serve as jurors each session as members of discipline-specific panels, and they only see the work samples, artist statement, and statements of intent, which is really how you plan to utilize your time at KHN. And we don't actually hold anyone to exactly what they say. So just talking about how the space could be beneficial to you in your practice. We like having the past residents on the jury since they're familiar with the program and spaces and whether or not the statement intent lines up with the available space and equipment. There's Laura Satina with our letterpress, the Vandercook SP15. We give special consideration to, for Nebraska-based artists, and we define that as those who currently live and work in Nebraska, grew up in Nebraska, or received a diploma from a Nebraska university or college. We save special spaces for early career, first residency, transitional residence, which is like post BFA or MFA programs. But we really love to have people as their first residency, and we actually have this happen really frequently, and that's very exciting to us, to be their first introduction to a residency program. Since I have a special interest in printmaking, I've been trying to make sure that we have at least a couple artists utilizing our Vandercook each session. So that's been really fun, but the type and everything was kind of crazy when I started. So we're working through that. But this, you see Laura Satino here, she was a recent resident. And I think that's about all I have. Show you a couple of our studio spaces. I guess there's also a few options to engage with our community. We do third Thursdays every month, which we have a huge group from our town that come and have wine and snacks with our artists and mingle with them, and then receive presentations about everyone's work and studio tours. And our residents really seem to enjoy that opportunity to engage with the community. We're a pretty hands-off approach to the residents. We don't schedule anyone's time except for these third Thursdays, and a meet and greet every time new residents arrive, so everyone knows the faces in the building. But yeah, we find that the artists really thrive when they can set their own boundaries and schedules, especially since we're in such a rural area. There's not a lot to do in the town. There's fun festivals and things, enough to do to be fun, but not enough to be super distracting from your work. But yeah, so thank you very much.
Thank you so much, Hannah, for presenting. And I just want to say a quick reminder before we have Macy present. If you have questions that come up during the presentation, please put them in the Q&A. Like, this is a great opportunity to ask questions specific to these residencies, but also residencies in general. Like, what do you pack? How should you curate your portfolio? You have a bunch of different people who will provide input. So the goal is to help you out. But to move forward, we have Director Macy Chadwick from In Cahoots Residency.
Thank you so much. Okay, I'm going to try to share my screen. And start the slideshow. Let's see. Sorry, guys. There we go. Okay, so I am the founder and director of In Cahoots. We are a pretty new program, just 5 years old, and we're located in Sonoma County in California. Now my slides won't. Okay, so here is a view from the field of the residency buildings. That the little red building is the studio building. We support printmaking, letterpress, book arts, writing, and also collaboration. So this is, you saw the green of wintertime, and then this is a picture of the dry of summertime. Sonoma County is beautiful. This is just down the street. We're really a rural location surrounded by horse farms and fields, lots and lots of cactuses, pretty mild weather all year round. This is a local park with some wildlife where we sometimes go for field trips with the residents. The facilities are shown in this picture. The big red barn is the printmaking studio. There's two little white houses that are guest houses where residents stay. And then the building on the right is my private residence. So I live on the property with the residents. So this is the red barn that was made into a printmaking studio. It's about 2,000 square feet. It includes the etching studio, the letterpress studio, which is back in the horse barn part of the barn, and a bindery studio. We also have a writing studio that is next to those buildings. So in the winter time, we host 3 artists at a time. Here are 3 artists having some fun with some prints at the end of their session, making a little joke about In Cahoots, even though our name is In Cahoots. And so we start each session with a welcome dinner, and then everyone has their own house and kitchen to cook their own food in. So this is one of the cottages and the kitchen in there. Another little cottage with its little yellow wood floor. So each cottage is 1 bedroom with a kitchen and bath. And then we have an apartment in the middle of the barn, which also is single occupancy. And it has its own little efficient kitchen and a bed on the main floor, as well as a sleeping loft. In the summer, we host 5 artists at a time. And our programming does go year round. So we have, I think, about 30 sessions a year, something like that. And so we have 5 artists in the summer because we have the addition of 2 what I call sleeping cottages, which is our version of glamping. So these are 25% off the cost of the other cottages and allow for a little bit more of an economical way to stay. Our residents do pay to come. So our cost is for 2 weeks, it's $1,600. For 1 week, it's $950. And then again, the sleeping cottages are discounted from that. And then we do have a really robust grant program. So I'd say a third of the people that come, at least, if not a half, get some kind of grant funding to help them pay for the cost of coming. So now I'm going to show you a little bit more specifics about our facilities. And I did forget to press start on my timer, bummer. So we have the etching press, 3 etching presses. One is the Tackett shown here. It is 40 by 72 inch press bed. I'll just show you a couple of artists who have come through to work in the space. This is Allie Norman working really small on the huge press bed, making some shaped etching plates. This is Kathy Warrener, who's printing as large as she can go on the Tackett using some laser cut plates. And then we have the Griffin press. This one's our newest press, just donated last summer. Its press bed is 32 by 52. And I don't have that many pictures of people working on it just yet. We also have the Conrad press, 36 by 54, and this is Nick Satinover, who some of you might know, working on that press. Some of his prints are hung on the wall behind him. And then this is Michael Ezel from Providence, yay, working on an etching on the Conrad again. A beautiful addition he completed. In the back of the barn is the letterpress studio. So it's 2 old horse stalls that were turned into 2 different print studios. And I always joke that letterpresses are the size of horses, so it's just perfect. So we have 1 Universal 1 Vandercook and 1 Universal 3. Here's Nick Schick working on the Universal 3. And he was doing some blend rolls, which then he turned into an artist book. This is Nancy Lober, who is working on some woodcut portraits, some reduction woodcut. I love those eyes. We also have a really big collection of wood type. So we outfitted an old wardrobe with all these trays for the wood type, as well as a Hamilton cabinet of wood type. So a lot of people come and play around with the wood type as image, and then also set, words and narrative with the wood type. So here's maxing out the size of the press bed on the Universal 3, which can print 18 by 24. Erin Fong doing a project she calls the Friendship Project. All these quotes about how to be a good friend. E-Bond working with some wood type with a project of questions. And this is the bindery space. So another wing of the barn is the book bindery. Here are two artists working together on the big 10-foot table in there. There are paper cutters, a guillotine, a foil stamper, and a dry mount press in there. Again, two artists making use. I find that once one artist wants to make books, everyone wants to join, and it ends up being kind of like a party space. Like, hey, I want to be at the table making books too. This is Nick Schick again putting together his colorful edition. And Karen Zimmerman making a big book cover. Some of the books that were made at the residency are here on display. Relief printing, collage. Sometimes people come with the parts to the book and put it together. Sometimes people start at the beginning and print a whole book edition while they're here. This is Annegret Frauenlob from Germany. And then we also encourage collaboration. So this is two artists who collaborated on this book edition together. And then three artists who signed up together, who worked side by side, as well as collaborating on some larger prints on the tackage. Again, people get excited about how big that press can print, so they get their biggest paper and just go for it. And then the little writing studio. We host one writer every session in the summer, and then in the winter, we have writers pretty often. They get their own private space to work. This is Amanda Moore, a poet from San Francisco. And then sometimes the writing studio is a good installation space. So this is a photographer, we've had textile artists, different people work in this space. We do mostly encourage printmakers to apply, but occasionally we have some different mediums that are printmaking adjacent. Then the end of your session, the beginning starts with a welcome dinner and the end is a work share. So this is 5 artists coming together to look at the work of Daniel Ciaccio, who has a space in Vermont called First Proof Press. And here is some info. The next residency deadline is June 1st. We have 2 application deadlines per year, June and October, June 1st, October 1st. And so we encourage people to apply during those deadlines or for those deadlines, and the grant applications are due at that time too. Again, printmaking, letterpress, book arts, writing, and collaboration. And then I do also want to note that we have a fundraising auction coming up. It's actually going on right now. We have this is how we raise money for the grants. And we have currently a silent auction on our website, and then our in-person auction is March 16th. So thank you so much, everybody. It's really nice to be here. I look forward to your questions. So I'm gonna stop.
Great. Thank you so much, Macy. So Brett and I have a few questions, but it looks like you all are populating the Q&A. So we're going to turn it over to you. So the first question that I have, and feel free to hop in as you like, panelists. When you're reviewing statements of intent or purpose, what do you look for specifically? Is it better to outline an idea of work that will be made during the residency, or go into detail about why this specific residency will be helpful to one's practice?
Good question.
That's a tough one off the bat.
For us, like I said, like I'm not going to hold anyone to what they've said in their statement of intent, just because as an artist, I know things change. You know, you're applying March 1st for a residency that doesn't start till July. Like a lot can happen in that time. So to me, it's more important, and I think to our jurors as well, to see why this, you know, Nebraska City is an interesting place for you to make your work. Is it the prairie? Is it the quiet, you know, a rural area? So I think that's a little more helpful for me when I'm going through applications.
Yeah, I'm going to follow up with what Hannah said, and I agree. I think it also shows that you have an understanding of the program. So you're not showing up like, oh no, I didn't know that this is what was going to be happening while I'm here. Or, yeah, that it's in this location, or that there's faculty, etc. And I think if there's a really tight outline that you're sharing, it also makes me wonder how open you are to collaboration and community as well. Not that I would ever hold that against you, but it is something that would pop up in my mind. So instead, talking about the residency and why it might be a good fit for your work is great.
I agree. A good fit for your work, but I do look at, I think it's good to have a specific proposal, certainly not, you know, the number of prints and the exact size, but just, I want to use etching, I want to use copper plates, you know, what it is you're proposing to do, just so I can make sure we have the facilities to support your idea. So that's really what I'm looking for. But same with what Hannah said, I'm not going to hold you to your proposal if you get here like 10 months after you proposed it. You know, you may have already done that idea, and then, you know, you're on to the next. But it just shows me that you know how to conceptualize an idea, and that you will fit the facilities here. Yeah.
I've got the next question for all three of you, and it is, how does your residency support printmakers and artists from underrepresented communities?
Yeah, we have a couple of different grants that we offer. One is an emerging artist grant, and another is a person of color grant. And so we are really, really looking to get a more diverse population here than we already have. So that's something that the jurors are really looking for, that I'm really looking for in applications.
Yeah, following up on what Macy said, we want to have an incredibly supportive space for people of different backgrounds or identities. And that's something we really strive to make sure that we represent in our incoming cohort. We want to make sure that not only do we have different disciplines that we're bringing in, because again, you know, we will have printmakers, painters, installation, you name it, but we also want to make sure that we are bringing in people from different backgrounds so that we can really have that true cohort like that. So.
Yeah, that's the same for us. I think that when we have a blind application process, sometimes that can be, it can be a little blinding. So I think that's something we're working on. But in your statement of intent or your artist statement, you don't say your name, but I mean, people are always talking about their identity or what their work is about. So there's definitely ways to identify as BIPOC or, you know, LGBTQ. And I think that our jurors are always really looking for that and open to it and excited. So
I do just want to add too that I'm especially always looking for a diverse population in each cohort. So I don't want all older artists or all younger artists or all you know, established artists. So I'm always looking for, I call them the diamond in the rough, like the young artists that this opportunity would make a huge difference for, you know. And so they may not have the strongest portfolio yet, but they're going to be an amazing, great energy and get a lot out of the opportunity to be here.
So maybe, Macy, that's a good reminder to reapply, that it's not always about your application, but sometimes who else is applying. Brett, I'm going to do two, if that's okay with you. The first one is short. If you could all just remind us where your programs are located and also what your application fee is.
we are located in Nebraska City, Nebraska, and our application fee is $35.
We are in Chautauqua, New York, which is kind of close to Buffalo. I always tell people, because people think it's close to New York City. It is not. It's like 6 hours, 7 hours.
Okay.
And our application fee is $30.
Okay, we are in Petaluma, California, which is Sonoma County. It's about an hour north of San Francisco, and our application fee is $25.
Great, thank you. And as a follow-up to that question, can you talk about how folks have funded their residencies in the past? I know, Macy, you mentioned grant funding, but what other folks have put together?
I know that I encouraged a couple of my, again, emerging artists to have flat file sales, and I saw that a couple of them went through with that. So on Instagram, just saying I'm trying to raise money for this residency, and I think they've been quite successful. So that's one way. We also offer, when people apply for a grant and they don't get funded a full grant, we also send out a list of grants that they can apply for on their own, just to sort of help them find some direction.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with what Macy said. We try to provide various grants. Like we are excited that this year our 6-week residency is fully funded. There is the application fee. You can contact us to waive it if necessary. We get that. But when artists aren't getting in for other residencies that I've been part of, we always try to suggest grants, and looking in your own state to see if you can get a grant for a residency. I think is a really wonderful way to start, is just looking at what your state offers. I know not all of them have equal funding, but that's a really great way to start.
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, we have our stipend, but I know that that's not easy for travel. But we also recommend looking at like your local artist council. Often they have like micro grants for travel and things like that.
I also have to say that there's been a couple of residents who applied for grants and maybe just got a partial grant and then ended up getting funding from their home institution, like if they were a teacher or a grad student or even adjunct. So that's also, ask your school if there is some funding for residencies.
Thank you for those great responses, and for supporting populations coming to your residency. I know we're all always asking that question, right? Like we'd all love to attend a residency, but then it's like that big looming question of how can you afford it? The next one is a simple question, but one that has big impact. So how accessible are your sites?
Unfortunately, not very accessible. We have, everything's ground floor here, but not handicap accessible as much as I would like. So not all spaces are accessible, but most are. And then I try to accommodate, especially people who have mobility issues, making sure they're in the cottage with the handrail, that kind of thing.
We have a ground floor apartment that is handicap accessible, and our studios are as well. And then we have an elevator that goes to the basement floor.
So our residence and our food hall are handicap accessible, and that is something we are working towards more and more on the actual art quad, which is where we are located. I can say that this year we have added more inclines so that we can get into various spaces and not have any door stops in the way. Same thing with the bathrooms, and that's something that I'm really want to keep pushing forward because that's incredibly important.
Great, thank you. A question that we have is, how many applications do you review per year? And if you could remind us how many residents you usually have per year as a comparison.
So for us, it's different every session. I find that the March 1st deadline has more applicants because a lot of academics want to be here in the summer when they have summers off. But I'd say each session is roughly like 240 applications. It's been in that neighborhood for a few years. And then we accept, it really depends on how many are requesting 2 weeks versus 8 weeks. But we get between 60 and 70 artists a year.
So historically, we get about 240 to 250 applicants per cycle. And that's what we're anticipating for this year. And for our 6-week residency, we do 24 residents that we'll be bringing in, and then 24 residents for the 2-week as well.
Wow, it's like 10%. We are at about 130 at the most applicants per round. And depending on whether it's winter or summer, so I think we have 80 applicants, 80 residents a year. So our most popular deadline is the one, again, for the summer sessions. So that's our October deadline is for like next summer. I think I have that right. Anyway, so we get a lot more applications for the summer sessions than the winter sessions, just like Hannah said too.
Great,
I guess-
thank you. Oh, sorry, Hannah.
And say I should also add that since people are applying in different disciplines for our residency, it shakes out a little bit different. So we have, I'd say, our writers, it's the most competitive area. We receive more applications there than visual art or composers. So we might take 15 visual, 15 writers, since we always have a writer and a visual artist sharing an apartment. And then maybe like 6 to 8 composers. That's per session.
Great, thank you. Oh, Brett, I'm sorry. One quick thing I wanted to point out was that Macy, your program is the youngest, I think, out of the 3. And so to folks in that listening in, Macy's applicant pool is a little smaller. So sometimes as you're kind of getting your feet started in residencies, looking at a newer program may be a place to go. Okay, Brett, I'm hogging the mic. I'm passing it off.
All is good. I want to ask a question from one of the viewers that speaks to kind of the multidisciplinary nature of your residency. So it says, how can a visual artist / printmaker who utilizes a lot of writing best display their work in portfolios to make a good impression in applications?
Ooh. For my application, I would say we have both images for visual artists, and then we can take like PDFs or Word docs for writers. So I would say show both so that we know that you're talented in both.
For us, it's a matter of applying in the interdisciplinary section, and that way you can submit PDF and JPEG as well. Yeah.
This is such a great question. One thing that comes to mind when I hear about the writing is if it's also implemented into the visual piece at all, or how that kind of plays out would be something I'd be looking at. And when you're applying for the application or going through the application process, we'd want to see the image, and then we ask in the description for you to be adding anything. So if there's writing that goes with it or impacts it, we would want that to be put in the description so we can see how it works and plays together. And then if it's totally separate, if the writing is something that is not working with a visual image, then we have a PDF that you can upload separately and talk about your writing. So I would just say it depends on how it works together, or if it is separately coming together.
I would also add, that made me think, Erika, I would add, if you want to apply to In Cahoots to be a printmaker, then don't show us your writing. If you want to apply to be a writer, then, like focus in. It's great that you have all these talents, but what exactly do you want to do while you're here? I think you need to show support for that particular project.
That goes for us as well. If you were looking to use the letterpress, we would need to see evidence that you use letterpress in your work. So including that in your portfolio would be really important.
Great. I'm going to ask you another 2-prong question. Do you share the selection criteria or rubric publicly? And can you tell us what percentage of applicants are selected as residents? And I think you've hinted at it as we talked about those numbers earlier.
We accepted about 50%. So we're which I was really proud of till I heard about 10% from Chautauqua. But yeah, we accept about 50%, and we don't share the rubric publicly, although if somebody wanted to see it, I wouldn't be opposed. to showing not their rubric, but a rubric in general, you know?
Yeah, so 10%. And Macy, I love that you were like doing that math too. Very impressive, not math minded over here always. So I was like, whoa, very good skills. So 10%. And we also don't really share the rubric. I guess we could, and it's something I could think about and look more into as a possibility. We are against that or anything, but yeah.
Yeah, I can't do that math fast enough. I think we're somewhere a little over 10%. And our rubric, we don't share it publicly, but also like Macy said, it's not a secret. If someone was interested in seeing it, it's a scale of 1 to 7, and then some specifics within that. So
I kind of want to ask a follow-up to this. How comfortable would you be if somebody reached out to you and said, what do you look for in an application? What is your response to that question, like via email?
I feel a lot of those questions, I feel like, where people are like, what are you kind of looking for? And I think also as part of my other job, I guess I would say, where I'm running the podcast or working with a lot of artists, this is something I talk about frequently. I think it's great to reach out to a residency and ask what they're looking for. It can't really hurt unless you're being, you know, just spamming their inbox or something. But a nice email to say, hey, you know, I'm applying. I just had a couple questions. It really can't hurt. And I'm very open to that in terms of giving any assistance. But overall, I always say just show your strongest work and what you're really interested in and working on and pursuing.
Yes.
I'm happy to answer. Oh, sorry, Hannah, go ahead. I'm happy to answer a question in general about what I'm looking for, but I have found that sometimes after someone is put on the waiting list or been told no, they've asked for specifics about why they didn't get in, and that's just too time consuming. So I'm happy to respond and say, you know, in general, we want a strong portfolio that relates to your proposal and using the equipment we have on site. But we don't really have time to give specific response to why you didn't get accepted, sadly.
A follow-up from an earlier question and some of you had touched on this a little bit. Is there some piece of advice for applicants on what to do or not do in their application? And that might vary program to program.
I'll just say, when you apply and if you are asked to have a cover letter or something and you use the wrong residency name, I mean, it's not like a huge red strike or anything, but as you're reviewing it, it's just a little bit of okay, you know, we want you to go to various residencies and whatnot, but it just kind of triggers something in there a little bit like, okay, what are they doing? Have they really looked at the residency? Do they understand where they're going to be and, you know, what they have access to here? So just making sure you're double checking all of that is something I always suggest for artists. And then, like I said prior, just making sure you are submitting your strongest work and that it's an accurate reflection of what you're interested in. Again, not that I expect you to be making that exact work while you're at the residency, but it shows that you have a drive and interest in something, and that it is relatively cohesively sitting together in a way. So those would be my two things.
If I'm going to say that one is kind of at a conclusion, as we've asked it, I think, in a variety of different ways. But I want to turn the lens back to accessibility. It says, there's a question that says, have you ever had deaf residents or non-native English speakers as residents?
I haven't been at our program long enough to know exactly if we've had deaf residents, but I know that we've had lots of non-native English speakers, and we're always happy to work with that. And I find that the people in Nebraska City are so kind. I think there's a lot of stereotypes about a small town and how they would take that person in, but they're so sweet, and our residents are often really surprised by that, but then also charmed. So
yeah, we've had non-native English speakers. We haven't had any deaf residents, but non-native English speakers for sure. And the other residents are always very kind about, you know, making sure they're understanding and following the conversation and that kind of thing. It's really nice.
I know that we've had non-native English speakers as well. Because I am also new to the program, I can't say if we've had a deaf resident or not. I do know in the larger institution that there is support for deaf residents that are coming into the institution as a whole, but I couldn't speak directly at this point about CVA.
Great, thank you. What type of images do you like in a portfolio, which is a tricky question? Do works need to be photographed professionally? Can we see works in progress? Can we see ideas of things that we might work on while at a residency?
I think for us, or at least for me, I know that our jurors are looking through so many applications. So sometimes there's not enough time to like parse out like your conceptual idea behind like a process shot, because they're kind of going through it and they're reading and then they're moving to the next one. So kind of like Erika was saying, your strongest images, your strongest work, try not to have, you don't have to have it professionally photographed, but good lighting, usually outdoors. Try not to have too much stuff in the background. I'm terrible at documenting my work and I'm learning to do that. But there's so many YouTube videos and little tutorials on how to do that are helping a lot. So
yeah, I really think it's putting your best foot forward to put your completed work that's well lit and well photographed, and just put your best foot forward. Don't have your cat in the background of the image, and you know, just make sure you've cropped out any riffraff that's around the, you know, paper you have behind your piece, that kind of thing. I'm actually interested in a work in progress image. I think that's great if it really relates to what you're proposing. I think that's interesting.
Yeah, agreed. It doesn't have to be a professional photo. That is so expensive. We have so many other expenses as artists. Like Hannah was saying, you know, having an iPhone and go on YouTube or whatever, and you can get some really great shots. So making sure it's cropped and professional in terms of how it's presented. So yeah, there's not like the cat or like a bathroom in the background. I've seen that with some paintings before. So just making sure that's nice and clean so we can focus on the image itself and not have a distraction of like a really beautiful linoleum floor that I love, but it doesn't really help the image. And in terms of in-process shots for our program, I would say we really aren't looking for that. We would prefer to be seeing the finished image and the finished piece. So again, those best works.
I think we'll go ahead and ask one final question as there's one remaining in the chat, and then we'll wrap it up from there. But it is, how much emphasis do you all put on the writing versus the visual for artists? Most of us are not writers by choice.
I always tell, for myself and for my jurors, I'm like, look at the images first and it'll get, the writing will support it. Because we read a lot of applications and I can focus on the writing a lot better when I've already seen the visuals that it's talking about. So I think visuals first and then writing. But what I want to see in the writing is that you've looked at my program, that you are a caring individual, that you want to be in community with other artists, these kinds of things. So that's what I'm looking for, more than like a polished artist statement that is professional, you know.
Yeah, I agree with what Macy was saying there, that we are always looking at the visuals first. You know, I'm an artist as well. I totally get it. Writing that artist statement, it's a lot of pressure too, to be getting that together. So always looking at the images, always looking at the craft behind the image as well. And the writing supports it, but more than showing how incredibly, I don't know, intelligent you are as a writer, I'm looking for the community. I'm looking for passion. You know, I would rather have that than something that feels like I'm reading an academic journal. So showing those things, and again, like Macy said, understanding the program and why you feel like you want to be part of that program.
I'm just going to echo everything you guys just said. We always ask our jurors to look at the images first. And then I will say proofread it. That's just show that you care enough to like make sure everything's looking good that way.
These are all great reminders, and I promise I will stop submitting residency applications at 11:58 p.m. to all of you. I want to thank you all so much for joining us. You've been great panelists, and also thank you to everyone for your great questions and answers as well.
I just also want to do a quick shout out, like again, to the panelists, the MAPC Member Engagement Committee and the board for all the effort that they put in to make these events happen. And thank you all for joining us this evening for our Spring 2024 PrintStream, What to Know About Residencies. And we hope you all have a great evening.
Thank you so much, everybody. It's really fun.
Thank
you,
you.
everyone.